All right. Oh, no, no, it's fine. No, it's totally fine. Don't worry about it. You know what I mean? Check, check. 12589678934. What a coincidence. Here we go again. Check, check. 3789426183612958. So, I'm going to point something out with my homework that some people might find frivolous, but I find really important to note. So we have this study guide, and I asked specifically that these numbers right here. Can you really not see that? What is it doing? I just caught the display capture, not. Yeah, display capture. Are you showing this? Okay, you are showing it. All right. All right, so these numbers right here, they indicate the slides. So 2.7 is PowerPoint 2, slide 7 through 8, right? Okay. I asked the teacher that because in the book it doesn't line up properly. So one of these questions is what the below reports cover. Okay, so uniform crime report. Let's see. What did they sections was 2.20 through 27. So slides 20 through 27. 20. Okay, uniform crime report. It gives information. Okay, I got that one already. But back up a little bit. This is where they start mentioning National Crime Victimization Survey, which is the second one that they ask about, which I have not found information on yet. The National Incident Based Reporting System, they do give information on that. So let's go forward. First of all, I had to go back a slide to get to this slide. So 20, 21, I still don't see any information. NCVS. That's not it still, that's the UCR. That it skips straight to NIBRS. So already we've got a problem. That's called an asymptote. If you're actually trying to teach people, you would have it where the UCR is the first one, obviously was the first one, but then you would show the NCVS because that is the order in which your study guide is supposed to show the answers. Okay? And then next, okay, we're not to the end of the slides yet, so it could still be in there, right? Just out of order. Don't see any mention of it there. I don't see any mention of it there. I still don't see any mention of it there. I don't see any mention of it there. There. It's mentioned again right here. And it says it shows a decline in crime. But that wasn't the question. Yes, it could be covered in the question, but that was question 12. So you want me to just write indicates decline in crime? Well, then I could have written that for this part. I don't need that if that's the answer. You see what I'm saying? Or you could get spicy and write indicates decline in crime, but it also applies to this one. So, okay, let's go to the next slide, see if it's there. No, it just moved on. Looks like they just moved on. So the answer, the actual answer that probably would be asked on the test, because it gives information like this and like this, is not in those slides. The answer's not in the slides. Now, this might not seem like a big deal to some people because it's like, oh, well, I could just get the book out, which is what that's what I'm gonna do next. As soon as I remember where I put my backpack. Okay, so I got my book. According to them, it should be chapter 2, and then somewhere down the line in chapter 2. The role of victims in crimes. You know, once again, and they said it applies to the slides, but why are the slides not lining up with the book? Criminal justice and the rule of law. Is that where it's at? Once again, already I'm wasting time. I'm wasting time because your study guide is not lining up with the information given to me in a way where I can quickly and easily find the information. Now, how do you think an attorney would feel looking up laws if they're like this? If the laws are written in a way where, oh, well, it might be somewhere, it might not be somewhere. And look, we kind of covered it right here, but is that enough to actually provide a solid defense? And who's really controlling that? Who's really controlling what the answer? Oh, well, we kind of gave you some answers, but look, all of a sudden, because everything is rigged, the defense has the answer, not the prosecuting attorney. Oh, look at that. Isn't that so fucking convenient? Oh, and guess what? Guess what? The only reason that's capable of happening is because there's some corporate interest controlling these proceedings. And you were only given 2 days to look up the answer. You were only given 2 days to look up the laws. And guess what? They're not fucking in there. So get your head out of your ass. And second of all, if you Google this shit, you're dead. I'm just saying, it's not really a one. I could Google it and not be dead right now. But I'm just painting the answer to the NCVS question. But is that the answer they're looking for? Maybe not. Probably not. And that's why I said if you Google it, you're dead. Because it might give you the wrong answer. And they may have controlled that. So this brings us back to when we talk about criminal justice. What is that? Justice refers to an equilibrium. Someone or something happens or does something, and it causes a perceived disequilibrium due to damage, likely. And then that's the crime part, is the damage, and then the justice is bringing things back into order. Now, what do you get when you flip that around? Where instead of responding to crime in a manner which encourages justice, instead you use crime to enact your personal justice. Well, that, my friends, is what we are looking at. The system has been turned around, and it is not actually necessarily being used to enforce justice when a crime has been done. Often they are using crime to do what they call justice based on their perceived, often corrupt perception of what they think the equilibrium should be. Just pointing this out. So you might think, oh, well, so what does it matter that the study guide, might not have that one answer immediately? Like, so what if this portion isn't clear? Well, what happens? Okay, first of all, I'm only taking this class right now, right? Okay, so, but what would happen if I had a million other things to do and I was taking 4 classes this semester and I just straight up didn't have enough time, and for some reason this one thing affected my grade in just such a way where someone could say, hey, you know what? And also, imagine it compounded. Imagine this isn't the only time this is happening. Because I had to ask, what do those numbers mean? Which, do they refer to the book or the slides? Essentially, that's what I asked. And so compound all of this and then understand that someone created these situations either through laziness or just inattentive to detail or on purpose. This is what I'm trying to get at, is what if it's on purpose to waste your time and make you vulnerable to someone interceding with information that was not available and cannot be available until the time of its intercession, planned out by a criminal organization which is claiming to be the people who are supposed to stop the crime because they have killed or incarcerated everyone who is supposed to be stopping them. That is what we're looking at in America. That is what Trump's presidential campaign and his presidency, his actual presidency, represents, is people who have used these sort of tactics either through incompetency and general just lack of awareness or care for others, or through the likely intentional criminal intent to enact their own personal version of justice, using the criminal justice system to twist everything on their heads, having eliminated or neutralized all of the people. Well, I say all, you know, essentially all of the people who would have been in the position to stop them. And this is why things like this, little things like this, are so upsetting, because they represent a bigger issue. And one of the most frustrating things is if you try to point something out like this and then you go use that as a reason to fight back or as a reason to rally others towards your cause, they'll just create a psyop and then spin a narrative where you're quote unquote crazy, insane, which is basically their way of saying you can't be right because you're invalid. And then they try to back it up. The only thing they have to back it up with is violence or a twisted explanation which ignores common sense or tries to use common sense in a way that's gaslighting you. And then they try to get you put into a psychiatric institution where they give you drugs which completely destroy your mental health, calling it mental health treatment, and they destroy your fucking physical capacity, and they torture you. They torture you and they ruin your body and your mind so that you can't remember what you were doing, you can't fight back, and then they put you through these MK Ultra programs. And then they use you as a fucking slave or they kill you. Now, I want you to think about America's history here. And its history with slavery and its history with mass violence, especially a civil war. These sorts of things, perceived equilibrium must align at least to a certain degree of tolerance with actual equilibrium, or else there will be what we call in the systems engineering world a fatal error. And the magnitude of that fatal error is dependent upon the circumstances. So I just wanted to point out that little things like this might seem super, super, like, obscure and, like, not important to most people because it seems like we only have so much time in the day. But this is like a bullet missing from the armory. It's like, okay, it's what we have thousands of bullets in the armory, but one of them is missing. That means it is somewhere. Either it is somewhere and it is not being reported, or somehow it never manifested even though it was reported to exist. These are the sorts of things which take down entire kingdoms, entire nations, and could be the end of the human race. Because when you base the entirety of an institution on the accuracy, specificity, and frankly, the reasonability of the words which are written and the numbers which represent real world things, and there are too many instances, or even just one really controversial or important instance of inaccuracy or imprecision or ambiguity, that sort of thing can ruin it all. And trying to point this out to people who can actually do something about it, or who can very clearly, not in a non-corrupt way, address it, is very difficult, because this entire system is corrupt in a way which is supposed to prevent people from doing that, because it is intentionally corrupt at this point. And don't get me started on, well, slavery never ended, it just changed forms. I understand that. However, there's a way that it's supposed to happen, and it's not even happening that way. It's not even happening that way. It's just the slave system is being abused by greedy people. And a slave system doesn't function correctly when it's being abused by greedy people. It has a very specific orientation and is supposed to be a mutually beneficial arrangement, or else it won't work. And sometimes you have to find a way to make it work for you, because sometimes people don't want to care. But if you make it work for you in a way that doesn't adhere to the greater good in general, which includes minorities, in fact, it has to include minorities or else you're missing the point, then you're going to encounter an undue amount of resistance when using the system against the system. So you have to align your interests with the greater good and with the good of the system. And that is, if everything is corrupt, then it's null. It's void. You might as well not have the system, because all it's doing is harm, because it's only quote unquote benefiting a few people, and it's not really benefiting them, because in the long run it's going to cause some very severe repercussions, even if those people don't believe that. That's the real delusion. The delusion is not, this sort of inaccuracy in the criminal justice system, or this sort of ambiguity or lack of information or roundabout wasting my time is actually really dangerous. That's not the delusion. That's true. The delusion is the people who are perpetuating that, thinking that they're not going to encounter some sort of extreme repercussion as the result of their actions. Because once you're at that point, you're arguing with the laws of physics, which are pretty well established. And if you want to prove me wrong on that, I'd love to see some things that violate the laws of physics, which don't result in severe repercussions. I would love to see that stuff. I believe in miracles. However, I also think that miracles tend to adhere to laws of physics as well. They just happen in a way which is perfect. Surface tension. Jesus walking on water, he actually used the surface tension somehow. That's a reasonable explanation. I would believe that. And if the reason is because he contains the spirit within him that created the water, that's a reasonable explanation. But to use devices of evil to do the same thing and then call it walking on water when you really weren't, that's what the system has been reduced to. That's what the system has been reduced to. And little things like this, I'm remaining as calm as I can about it, because these are otherwise I would just be having a mental breakdown, and I wouldn't be doing something productive. And it's productive for me to acknowledge this stuff. So, because I'm using my time in a manner in which is not harming me further. And one of the things that they do is they try to say, well, now that you've done this, we're going to attack you. So ultimately it did harm you further and we disproved you. But the only thing that does is prove me right. And then they try to bury the information. But even if you bury the documentation and destroy the documentation, the event still occurred. The event occurred. And let me tell you what, this might be a cry for help, because this clearly says suffers from underreporting, cannot address unreported crimes. Okay, that doesn't mean they didn't happen. Some people feel that the crime rate has generally increased since 1980, although apparently it's, according to the reports, been decreasing. So this brings up a serious issue about manipulation within the system and how it can affect the people it's supposed to protect. And I'm going to leave it at that for now, because I think if I go any further, I'm in Detroit Become Human territory, which I would love to address, but that's not the point of this video right now. I just wanted to get off my chest that that's what's going on with this sort of thing right now, and that it frustrates me, and I'm actually trying to do the work. And when the work is not set up in a way in which I should be able to do it easily and in a timely manner, then it is not really about the work. It is about figuring out why the work is not easy when it should be. I should still have to put in the effort. There's that. But that's separate from even being able to put in the effort in an effective manner. That's what I'm getting at. So, long story short, that's what's wrong. And I'm going to keep trying to do the right thing. Like, for example, I'm going to look for the answer in the book. But I don't think I'm going to find it, to be honest with you. But I'm going to keep looking. So, discretion, that was earlier. Keep going. Also, I'd like to point out while I'm looking that psychopaths is an anime entirely about crime control versus due process. And so if you have any questions about my concern, you should please watch that series and understand where I'm coming from. Disparity, discrimination. Disparities, explaining disparities. And just reminding myself, UCR. As soon as I see the sections about the UCR, that's where I start. Crime and causation, types of crimes. It should be in this section. UCR, there's that information. Okay, NCVS. Now I asked specifically, is this about the PowerPoint? Or, where is it in the book? And he said it's the PowerPoint. And here, the answer was not in the PowerPoint. However, it is in the book, but only in a way. It's in a way where it split the answers. The answer, some of it's in the book, some of it's not. So I bet it's all in the book, but you gotta understand where I'm coming from. And after what I've been through and people acting like they are the authority and that is why that gives them the right to treat me this way and that way, and then I encounter things like this which they are clearly not doing their due diligence in order to provide a safe environment for me, especially a safe learning environment, then I have to question the nature of that authority. Okay, here's the answer. The NCVS is considered a self-reported measure of criminal behavior because it uses survey research to ask people whether they've been victims of crime. Now that sounds like police entrapment because they're basically trying to get people to snitch on other people, and if you haven't been following the plot, people don't like snitches very much. Or rather, people who have a trust-based, honesty-based protocol don't like snitches, in the sense of, why did you tell them that? It's not even that crazy. You told them that so that you could get something out of it. Now, if there's a real issue, like, holy shit, this person shot me, I don't have any way of dealing with it, can you please help me? Then what is the NCVS cover on that? You know what I mean? I mean, maybe it would be included on that sort of thing. I don't know. It's just like, okay, so if they didn't report it at the time, what makes you think they're going to be honest, or that it's going to have any real bearing on life that they're reporting it now? I'm not saying it can't be useful. I'm just saying, is that really an effective tool? It's a question. I'm challenging it in a healthy way. It very well might be. I don't know. But it also, considering the rest of the context, brings together a concern of some issues. Anyway, I got the answer, so I'm going to stop recording now, and I'm glad that I could share some of my thoughts on this.